Welcome back, Night Owl. You couldn't sleep again, could you? That's fine. Neither could I. So let's keep each other company while we drift into something much darker. The disappearance at the baseball field. Back in high school, my friends and I had a hangout spot like no other. A baseball field behind the abandoned grade school. We always thought we'd get there one day and find a construction crew plowing the whole place down. But they never came. At least not when we were kids. We figured it was because our town was too damn poor to do it, which was probably true. And it wasn't like it was a good real estate location anyway. It sat right along the woods, far from the rest of town. Essentially in the middle of nowhere, just like everything else around us. We loved it because no one else ever went there. People would break into the school sometimes and add graffiti, and the cops would show up for that, but they never came to the field. It was a safe haven for our friend group, which mattered a lot because many of my friends didn't have the best home lives, especially Tim, whose mom would call the cops on him for whatever reason she could invent that day. But at the field, there was nothing anyone could do. We spent summer nights on the rusted bleachers, smoking and talking about God knows what. I loved that place. We all did. Still, even before everything happened, one thing always creeped me out. The old lamp by the bleachers that somehow still worked. The town must have forgotten about that too. It gave off an orange hue, and since it was the only light, we were always shrouded in it. It didn't light up much. Whenever I got too high, I'd stare into the surrounding woods swallowed in darkness and think about how someone, or something, could watch us without us ever knowing. It got on my nerves until someone cracked a joke and snapped me out of it. I still wonder how many times they watched us. I'll never know. Early that summer, one night Johnny and I planned to head to the field. I must have left before him because his car wasn't there when I arrived. I decided to go in alone, even though it was frowned upon. We liked to think we were tough, but walking through the woods alone at night wasn't usually our thing. I enjoyed the thrill, though. I passed the school, walked through the woods, and reached the field. After waiting about 10 minutes with no sign of him, I started smoking. 30 more minutes went by. Nothing. The thrill disappeared, and I decided to walk back to my car. Jogging, really, because of how uneasy I felt. I texted him a couple times with no response, waited another 10 minutes in my car, then drove home. When I woke up, still no text. I was annoyed but didn't think much of it until my mom asked if I'd seen him. None of our friends knew anything. The last time anyone saw him was 2 nights earlier at the field. A day passed, then another. Soon the whole town knew. Search parties sprang up everywhere. My friends and I joined some, but we never found him. No one did. To this day, his body has never been recovered. At the time, I tried telling myself he ran away. He was adventurous, always talking about traveling the world and how the town felt claustrophobic. But deep down, I knew he wouldn't leave like that. He would have left a note, probably on the bleachers, where only we'd find it. After about a month, I went back to the field again. I went alone. I was so angry at the world that I didn't care if I got mauled by some sort of animal lingering in the woods. But just as I got to the end of the woods path, I noticed there were people on the bleachers. For a second, I thought it was just my friends, considering we had never seen anyone else there before. But they weren't. I had never seen these people in my life. 3 of them were on the bleachers, sitting completely motionless. They looked like statues, but they weren't the ones that creeped me out. There was another. He was dancing and skipping around. It made me uncomfortable how happy he was, but it wasn't an ordinary kind of happiness. At the time, I figured he must have been on Molly. Now I just think he's a damn psycho. Worst of all, he looked familiar, but I couldn't pinpoint him. It was like seeing an unfamiliar face in a dream. You know you've seen it before somewhere, but you have no idea where. I couldn't handle it. It was just so damn strange, so I tried to get out of there as quietly and quickly as I could. Luckily, they didn't follow. At least, I don't think they did. When I got back to my car, my first thought was to hightail it out of there, but I didn't follow that instinct. Instead, I drove around the school lot. In the back corner of the parking lot, I saw a car. I knew the model. It was the same one Johnny drove, but as I spotted it, the lights turned on. I abruptly reversed and got the hell out of there. As summer went on, I couldn't get them out of my head. I told all my friends and they agreed it was weird, but they didn't think much of it. I even stopped going to the field because of them. On a late July day, feeling nostalgic and sad thinking about Johnny, I decided to look at the yearbook to catch up on some memories. That's when I found him. One of the janitors was in the background of a sports picture. As soon as I turned the page, I knew it was him. Same face, same hair. It was the dancing man. It had to be. I couldn't believe it. I told all my friends, but they didn't know what to do. Eventually, I went to the cops. I'm pretty sure they thought I was crazy, but they still said they did a background check on the guy. They told me they couldn't find a thing. Even his social security card didn't lead anywhere. I tried researching on my own, but I couldn't find anything. The man was a damn ghost. Near the end of the summer, I went back to the field with a few friends. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I looked into the abyss of the woods, I felt afraid. I longed for the feeling I once had there. But I knew it wasn't coming back. The place was no longer home to me. When I left that night, I never went back. Near the end of the summer, I was at a Dunkin' Donuts. It was early in the morning, so I was pretty groggy, until I saw him. The dancing man, the janitor, it looked exactly like him. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, but the longer I looked, the more convinced I became. Then he saw me and smiled. He hurried out of the store and I followed him, but one of his buddies was parked curbside at the exit. He rushed in and they sped away before I could reach them, but what I saw horrified me more than anything else. The license plate of the car they were driving was the same as Johnny's. I knew it because he had a unique plate, 4-pack 207. It was the same car I had seen a month before. Then it clicked. That was Johnny's car. They got a paint job, so I didn't notice back then, but I should have. I still beat myself up over it. I never saw him again, or the car. Nowadays, it's all just a memory. One I wish I could forget. Rest in peace, Johnny. Tate's Hell Forest Chase. It was the summer of 2024, and my 3 buddies, Jake, Sam, and Marcus and I, were desperate for a break from our internship at the Kennedy Space Center. We'd been buried in rocket data for weeks, but as star geeks, we craved a night under a pristine sky. We pored over light pollution maps and Google Maps, zeroing in on a remote clearing deep in Tate's Hell State Forest, a swampy, desolate stretch of Florida's panhandle. The name came from an old legend about Sebe Tate, a settler who vanished in the swamp in the 1800s, supposedly cursed. We brushed it off. Ghost stories were for kids. We just wanted stars. Our safe haven was an Airbnb, a cozy cabin near Apalachicola, about 30 miles from the forest's edge. After work that Friday, we piled into my Tesla Model Y and Marcus's Mustang, loaded with blankets, snacks, and a telescope. No camping gear, since we'd been sleeping back at the cabin. The 7-hour drive from the Space Center was grueling, and we hit the Airbnb late, dropping our bags and grabbing a quick snack before heading back out again. The final stretch into Tate's Hell was brutal, narrow dirt trails twisting through dense pines and murky wetlands, the air thick with cicadas and the occasional splash of something in the water. With no cell service, we used walkie-talkies to stay connected between cars, their crackles cutting through the dark. Around 2 a.m., we reached the clearing, tired and buzzing. The sky was unreal, the stars blazing like they were close enough to grab. We spread out blankets, set up the telescope, and dove in. 15 minutes later, Sam's voice hissed over the walkie-talkie from the Mustang. "Yo, you see that? Headlights!" My gut twisted. We turned, and a faint glow crept along the trail we'd driven in on. Out here, 40 miles from the nearest town, at 2 a.m. in a massive forest. Nobody's just passing by. Whoever was out there was trouble. Jake, in the Tesla with me, grabbed his walkie-talkie. "Flash 'em, see what they do." I flicked the Tesla's headlights. 3 sharp bursts. An old pickup truck, rusted and battered, stopped about 100 yards off. No honk, no wave, nothing. Then we saw them. Shadowy figures stepping out, 2 or 3, hard to tell in the glare. They just stood there staring. And that's when we heard faint voices, low and garbled, drifting through the swamp, whispers we couldn't make out. "This is messed up," Marcus crackled over the radio. Sam sounded spooked. "Voices? Nobody's out here at 2 a.m. for anything good." I swung my flashlight, but the beam didn't reach, catching only shadows. Those whispers kept going, soft and sinister, making my skin crawl. Jake tried to stay cool. "Maybe locals, but let's move," he said. We agreed over the walkies to find another spot, but we set a rule. If those lights showed up again, we were racing back to the Airbnb. We turned off the main trail. Anyone following us was after us. We sped a mile down a side trail, found another clearing, and set up fast, just blankets and nerves. 5 minutes in, Marcus's voice cut through the walkie-talkie. Urgent. "They're back." My heart sank. The same headlights sliced through the dark, much closer now. Then came a gut punch, an engine rev, like they were doing it as a threat. Sam said, "Get us out now!" We scrambled into the cars, Jake and I in the Tesla, Marcus and Sam in the Mustang. I floored it, the Tesla jolting over roots and branches, scraping underneath like claws. Those headlights stuck to us, high beams blinding in my rear view mirror. Jake was on the walkie-talkie. "Marcus, you good?" Marcus replied, "Barely. They're right there." We were 40 miles from help, just 4 young, basically defenseless interns. At 2 a.m. in a place called Tate's Hell, you don't meet good people. I pushed the Tesla to its limits with Marcus close behind in the Mustang. The trail veered in one direction, and for a second, as we turned, the truck's headlights vanished. I prayed we'd lost them, but shortly after, they were back, like they were toying with us, knowing we were trapped. We hit a fork, and I swerved left, hoping it led to the main road. The truck followed. Finally, after much more panic and stress, the dirt turned to pavement and a faded highway sign appeared ahead. I glanced back, expecting the headlights, but they were gone. Marcus's Mustang pulled up beside us and we stopped on the shoulder, panting, staring into the dark. All we heard from the forest now were crickets and the crackle of our walkies. The drive back to the Airbnb was dead silent. We stumbled into the cabin, locking the door, but even that safe haven felt unsafe after what we'd faced. Who were they? We considered possibilities. Poachers, drug runners, something shady, or something tied to those voices in the old tales of Tate's Hell. At 2 a.m., in a place like that, nobody's out for a good time. The way they watched us, the way they chased us without rushing, it wasn't a prank. It felt like they wanted us to be afraid. We never went back. We don't talk about it, not at the Space Center, not anywhere. But when I'm driving those lonely Florida roads at night, I think a small part of me has permanently become more hyper-aware. The Shrine Beneath the Ryokan. In December 2023, I took a 3-week vacation to Japan. My family owns a hotel near the small mountain town of Kaga-Ansen in the west of Japan. It was a large Japanese inn, also known as a ryokan, built into the side of the hill next to the Daisho-ji River. The area surrounding the hotel had been inhabited for at least 2 millennia, and it was considered a sacred place. My father had told me long ago that when the hotel was being constructed, the builders found a couple of old stone blocks and pillars at the site. Apparently, there had been some sort of shrine built there around the 9th century. The last time I stayed in that hotel was over 15 years ago, so I was interested in reliving the experience of staying there. As well as that, I really enjoy exploring. And remembering the story my father told me, I decided to do some off-trail hiking in the forest below the hotel, hoping to find any traces of the ancient ruins he mentioned. As soon as I arrived in the nearby city of Kanazawa, I rented a car next to the train station and drove up to the hotel. It was snowing heavily, and traffic was terrible. The ride was supposed to take around an hour, but instead it took 2. I arrived at the hotel around 8 and let myself in. The hotel was basically vacant in December, and tourists don't usually go to this part of Japan in the winter. There was no staff at all. I found myself being the only person in the entire building, which felt surreal. Being alone in such a place in the middle of nowhere. I grabbed one of the keys behind the counter, let myself into one of the suites, and slept there for the night. The next day, I went into the forest below the hotel. The snow was quite deep, up to my ankles, and trudging down rough terrain in boots was absolute hell. I must have walked far enough into the forest to lose my sense of direction. I checked my phone, but there was no signal at all. I had been walking for around an hour and didn't know where I was. I was surrounded by trees on all sides, and directly in front of me was a large hill. I thought it would be good to climb to the summit so I could get a better vantage point and possibly locate any sign of civilization. The ascent was very tough, the sides of the hill steep and rocky. However, off to the left, I noticed what looked like the remnants of a path. I slowly traversed toward it. It was a dirt path that wound its way up toward the summit. The path was slightly overgrown, with dead branches blocking the way up, but soon enough I managed to reach the top. However, I noticed that the path simply ended. I looked around the hill and noticed a small cavity in the hillside above the path, hidden in the vegetation maybe 5 meters away. I climbed up and found myself standing in front of the entrance to a small cave. A bit of mud had washed into the cave, but the opening was large enough for me to fit my body through. I had a small flashlight on me and shone it into the opening. I could see a small alcove in front of me with another small opening to the left. As I entered the cave, a certain smell hit me. The best way to describe it is that it smelled like an animal enclosure at the zoo. The alcove in front of me was bare except for a large rectangular block of stone placed right in the middle. As I walked deeper into the cave, I found myself in a large stone chamber. There were 2 other side tunnels that branched from this chamber, but I didn't explore them. There was yet another rectangular stone block, but this time it was on the far side of the chamber and looked to be hollow. I got close to the block, and to my utter shock, there appeared to be human bones inside it. Surrounding the bones was a long piece of steel and a bunch of old bronze coins, the ones with a square hole in the center. I stood there in a mix of shock and disbelief. I reached down and picked up one of the coins. Why I did that, I don't know. Instinct, I guess. The coin was old and corroded, but some details were still visible. Before I could examine it closely, I heard a loud crash coming from deep within one of the side tunnels. I quickly pointed my flashlight toward the origin of the sound. The animalistic scent grew stronger, making the air feel toxic. For some reason, I grabbed the long piece of steel resting among the bones and held it in front of me with one hand as a weapon. The flashlight made it clear that the steel piece appeared to be the remnants of a long blade. I started backing toward the entrance. The smell changed. I could smell smoke under the overwhelming stench. Then I heard a rhythmic thumping from deep within the tunnel, like someone banging on a drum. That's when I lost it. I ran out of the cave toward the opening. As I ran, I swear I felt the entire cave vibrate and shake. I jumped out of the entrance onto the slope below and tumbled onto the snowy ground. I had dropped the blade, but I didn't care to pick it up. I kept running down the slope, crashing through dead twigs and branches. I ran until I heard the sound of a car driving past in the distance. Soon, I found myself on the side of the road. I let out a sigh of relief as I collapsed. I managed to flag down a passing car. The driver was reluctant at first, but after seeing how distressed I was, he let me in. Through conversation, I learned I was around 4 miles from the hotel. Soon enough, I arrived back. I went to my room, packed everything, and got in my car. I didn't feel safe being the only person in the hotel. I drove back to Kanazawa, where I stayed for the night. This story has a follow-up, though. When the hotel reopened in February, I got a text from my father saying someone had broken into the hotel through one of the first-floor windows. Surprisingly, nothing was damaged or stolen except for the front door of my room, which had been smashed wide open with some sort of blunt metal object. I don't know if this is connected to my experience, but I am definitely never staying at that hotel again. The woman in the neighbor's house. My family has a little vacation home in Colorado. My parents are avid skiers, which was the motivating factor behind that purchase, and the home has been in the family since before I was born. It's definitely showing its age in a lot of ways, but it's also about 40 years old, so it's not going to look new. My dad has had to do a lot of upkeep on the place over the years, and though it's still in our family today, it's really on its way out at this point. My dad talks about knocking it down and putting up a new place, but I don't really get involved in his decision. The story takes place about 15 years ago when I was 8 and my brother was 11. We were up in Colorado during a blizzard. The snowfall was insane, and of course my brother and I had to go out and play in it. The great thing about going up there when we were kids was the sheer amount of space. The property has a huge opening with woods surrounding it in all directions, and there's a dead-end road that goes downhill leading to a few more almost equally big properties, making it the perfect layout for hide-and-seek, snowball fights, or any number of games like that. My brother Josh and I went out in our snow gear to play our snowball fight game with our own custom rules. Basically, we'd set up 2 forts. We could pick them to be anywhere but had to tell each other where, and then we would make one giant snowball as the so-called jewel that we'd have to steal from the other base and bring back to ours. Josh chose to make his base on the nearest neighboring property. There was almost never a car there, like 9 times out of 10, so we'd often play games on their property too, since they were never around. We'd build little walls to emulate a fort and put the big snowball behind them. To get to each other's bases, we could either cut through the woods or take the road up or down. Once Josh ran down the road and disappeared, I was supposed to wait for him to blow the whistle to signal the start of the game. I waited for a while, over 5 minutes, and since he'd already set up his fort, all he had to do was get down there and blow the whistle. When it hit around the 10-minute mark, I decided I probably just couldn't hear the whistle from where I was, so I started plotting my route. Was it better to go through the woods or down the road? I chose the road because honestly, going through the woods during a blizzard at 8 years old was terrifying. I started trudging through the unplowed snow as flakes blew into my face. Though with all the layers my mom made me wear, I wasn't cold at all. As I approached the driveway to the neighboring property, I looked through the trees and didn't see Josh. With all the brush and trees bare in winter, it was easy to see through the woods. So I cut into the property through the trees to sneak in, but Josh was nowhere in sight. I saw his fort, looked around, and when I confirmed he wasn't there, I approached it to grab the jewel. Before I could, I heard a woman's voice yelling, "Excuse me, are you looking for your brother?" I turned toward the sound and saw an older woman at the neighbor's front door. I called back that we were playing a game, and she responded, "Your brother's in here." I was confused. I started walking toward the front steps, and as I got closer, her face became clearer. To my 8-year-old mind, she looked a lot older than she probably was. As I approached the house, I noticed someone looking out from one of the upstairs windows. For a second, I actually thought it was Josh. It was someone with half their face covered, presumably by a black beanie, and the bottom part hidden below the window frame. I also noticed another trail of footprints leading to the front door. They had to be Josh's. The woman was giving me a very creepy smile, and I remember the feeling of my heart dropping for some reason. She waved me inside to get out of the cold. I stopped dead in my tracks and screamed, "Josh!" But there was no response. The woman stopped smiling. She clearly didn't expect me to do that. I also noticed that the other trail of footprints was doubled over. If it was Josh, his footprints turned around and headed back toward the woods. Then I heard heavy footsteps inside the house, sounding like they were coming downstairs from the second floor. I started to run, and the woman screamed something at me or someone else that I didn't understand. I looked back once at the house, and the face that had been in the upstairs window was gone. I ran off the property and back onto the road, following my own footprints through the snow. As I got closer to home, I heard my dad's whistling from up the hill. The exact whistle he used to call my brother and me home for dinner. When I reached our driveway, my dad and Josh were already there, having been on their way to get me. Before I could explain anything, Josh was already telling me that there were people in the neighbor's house telling him to come inside. I said the same thing happened to me, so my dad grabbed some kind of weapon and went down there while we waited inside with our mom. He came back after a long while and said the front door was locked and nobody answered, so we went to another neighbor's house. They knew the owners and called them. This part still gives me chills whenever my dad brings it up. The owners of that house were not there that weekend, and nobody was supposed to be in the house. The cops were called, and my brother and I had to describe the woman to one of the officers. After that, we weren't involved anymore. According to my dad, the back door was unlocked and the house was investigated, but nothing turned up. Because of that, my parents took home any extra valuables in case someone had broken in. After that day, we avoided playing on that property altogether, just from the sheer creepiness of that memory. Thank God we didn't go inside that house. Devil's Forest. I've been skiing for as long as I've been able to walk. My parents used to ski competitively. That's actually how they met. So it was really important to them that my siblings and I learned as early as possible. Fast forward about 20-odd years, and that's how old I am now. This story happened a few winters ago when I was 21 and a senior in college. Everyone knows the best skiing accessible to the Northeast is in Vermont. It was going to be a trip like any other. Me, Jaden, Rylan, and Amir. I can't remember for the life of me what mountain we were skiing that trip since Jaden booked everything and Rylan was driving. What I do remember was that it was massive, with something like 7 ski lifts covering all the different peaks. If I had to guess, it was Killington. We skied nearly 2 full days, and I'm sure there were still trails we missed. That's how big it was. It was the second day. After skiing the day before, we had a good grasp on the trails we enjoyed, so this day was mostly about testing ourselves and pushing the limits, as per tradition. I'd be lying if I said we didn't have a handful of fireball shooters to liven things up. We were having an extremely enjoyable trip. The double blacks never got boring, and racing down each slope was its own little game. We had maybe an hour left until the lifts closed. We were exhausted, but we knew that as soon as we hit the road to head home, we'd instantly miss the mountain again. We were debating how we'd end the trip at the top of the lift when 2 girls without helmets made their way over to us. Now, this might sound odd to some people, but I wouldn't be doing the story justice if I left it out. The girls, one brunette and one blonde, were drop-dead gorgeous, and I don't say that in a weird way. They were just objectively 2 of the most beautiful women I'd ever seen in person. It was disarming. They introduced themselves as Taylor and Devin, and we started making small talk. They told us they were bored because the mountain was full of older folks, which was something I had literally mentioned to my friends the day before, so it made sense that they'd approach a group of young guys their age. Devin seemed like a really seasoned skier because she kept asking Amir all these technical questions about his skis. He and Rylan actually owned their own expensive skis, as opposed to Jaden and me, who always rented, which the girls seemed impressed by. Taylor made a comment about our shooters, and we jokingly told them the alcohol unlocked our true ski potential, or something dumb like that, which they found funny. To our surprise, Devin pulled out an unmarked bottle and taunted us, calling us bitches for sticking to a tame drink like Fireball. The 4 of us welcomed the challenge and happily took a swig from their bottle, something that immediately pushed Rylan a little over the edge. He always drinks more than he can handle, so that wasn't shocking. I made a mental note not to drink too much because something about this whole situation rubbed me the wrong way. I still had trouble believing 2 girls like this would want anything to do with a bunch of dumb kids like us, especially when we were wearing helmets and our faces weren't clearly visible. Things were going really well, though. Amir was being his usual overly flirtatious self, but Taylor seemed into it. so I didn't complain. I figured we were just going to spend the rest of our time on the slope with these girls, which I didn't mind. Hell, maybe they knew something fun we could do after the slopes closed. Just then, Devin asked if we had skied a trail called Devil's Forest, a name I definitely didn't recognize. Our friend Chase would have had the trail map memorized since he's a walking GPS, but he wasn't with us. We told them we hadn't, and they explained that it was a glade trail that was a little obscure and rarely open. For those who don't know, glades are basically trails that weave through the trees, so you're skiing in a forest. And we actually enjoyed glades more than anything else, so this Devil's Forest trail instantly piqued our interest. We told them we were game, and they motioned for us to follow them. We reached a choke point on our skis, and they told us to take them off because we had to walk slightly uphill for a short while. I could tell we were in a relatively desolate part of the mountain, as the snow was perfectly fresh, and there was no one around. The thought of an adventure was kind of invigorating, so I thought nothing of it. Drunk and curious, we clipped our skis off and followed the girls up the mountain. Amir and Rylan ran ahead, presumably to flirt some more with them, and Jaden and I hung back a little to give them some space. As we followed, I could tell Jaden looked a little wary, so I asked him what was on his mind. I like to think of us as the rational, level-headed ones in the group. Amir was too unpredictable and impulsive, and Rylan would follow a girl if she let him off a cliff. Jaden said it was weird that this supposed trail would be inaccessible from a ski lift, which I agreed with. I had never had to walk uphill to reach a trail before. We agreed to just keep a keen eye on things. After all, what could two girls do to a group of 4 big guys anyway? They led us into the forest, and the terrain finally started leveling out. Jaden and I caught up with the group, and it was apparent that Rylan and Amir had both made considerable progress. Rylan had his arm around Devin, who was smiling and laughing. They pointed in the same direction we'd been traveling, which had suddenly become a downward slope. I sighed, knowing this was another instance where we could have used Chase's help. He would have known exactly where we were and where this trail would lead. Jaden was still skeptical and asked the girls if they were sure this was a real trail. They said yes and told us it would take us right back to the lifts. Before I could say anything, Devin pulled the bottle out again and told us we had to finish it. Amir and Rylan happily took hefty swigs, but when the bottle got to Jaden, he said he was drunk enough. As soon as he spoke, I could have sworn Devin's smile turned into a really angry scowl for a split second. But when I blinked, she was smiling again. I must have been the only one to notice, because my friend's expressions were normal. She put on a seductive smile and batted her eyes at Jaden, asking him nicely. He reluctantly grabbed the bottle, if only to shut her up. When it got to me, I put the bottle to my mouth, but didn't actually drink. Everything about this encounter was suddenly triggering alarm bells in my head. I handed the bottle back to Devin, who put it away. I noted that neither girl drank this time around, and it dawned on me that I hadn't seen either of them drink anything at all. I checked my phone. Half an hour until the lifts closed. I tried to come up with some excuse for why we couldn't ski this trail, saying we wouldn't have enough time to get back up and down the mountain to where we had parked. The girls insisted we'd have enough time and that the lifts were connected at the bottom anyway. Then, without warning, they told us we were wasting too much time and took off toward the slope, telling us to follow them if we could. Amir and Rylan immediately followed, clearly hoping for a favorable outcome at the bottom. Jaden and I obviously didn't want to, but figured we had no choice but to follow. So that's what we did. I let Jaden lead the way, because this was still a challenging-looking slope, and skiing in the forest is no joke. I'm not sure what I was expecting, but when we made it to the bottom, I was relieved. The 4 of them were at the bottom of the slope, laughing and flirting like before. Jaden and I caught up with the group, but something was wrong. There wasn't a lift in sight. We were surrounded by forest on all sides. I sternly asked the girls where the lift was, and they told me to stop worrying and said it was close by. Then they told us they'd take us there in a few minutes. I relaxed a little, assuming I'd been worried for nothing. As I was rubbing my eyes, I heard a distinct thump in the snow. I opened them to see Rylan literally passed out on his back. The girls laughed, calling him a lightweight, but I could tell it was more serious than that. Before I could react, Amir slumped over too. I started freaking out and rushed over to them, unclipping my skis. I thanked my lucky stars they seemed to be breathing normally, but I was beyond horrified. Jaden took a step toward the girls, asking what the hell was going on. They seemed genuinely shocked, claiming they had no idea what was wrong. Jaden took another step before he also collapsed in the snow. I stared in shock, trying to wrap my head around the gravity of the situation. I couldn't fathom that this was happening to us. My head started spinning, and I was sure I was next. The girls had stopped pretending by then, and they looked at me like they were waiting for me to pass out. I felt myself getting dizzy, so I sat down in the snow even though I wanted to stay standing. I demanded to know what they had given us. They didn't respond or even move. I yelled at them over and over, but they still didn't react. I wanted to get up, but I literally couldn't stand. I didn't pass out though. I kept my eyes open the whole time. Eventually, Taylor turned to Devin and said something like, "He must not have drunk enough." She looked more pissed off than anything. Devin cursed before telling Taylor they had to go. I was still frozen. After unclipping their skis, I watched them take Amir's and Rylan's skis before trudging off into the woods. I had to do something, but my body still felt numb. I couldn't just let them walk off with my friend's skis. I knew they wouldn't be able to move that fast carrying 2 sets of skis each, especially in deep snow. After a few more minutes, I started to regain control of my body. I stumbled after their tracks, but it was freakish how far they'd gotten even with all that added weight. Eventually, I turned a bend and saw them in the distance, way ahead. I figured as long as I could keep them in sight, I'd be able to track them down. I followed for a couple of minutes, and that's when things got crazy. The forest gave way to a clearing that led to a road. We must have been on the opposite side of the ski mountain, which made sense in hindsight. That's when I noticed a van parked in the distance. I stopped at the edge of the woods. The side door opened, and 4 big-looking guys stepped out to intercept the girls. The girls motioned for them to get back in the van, and one of the men turned and pointed directly at me. That's when I realized I was in too deep, and also felt like an idiot for leaving my unconscious friends behind. The guys seemed to be debating whether to leave or chase me, and I wasn't waiting another second. I started wobbling back the way I came, knowing I'd find my friends by following the tracks in the snow. I found them still passed out. I figured Jaden had the least to drink, so I tried shaking him awake first. After a couple handfuls of snow to the face, he was awake enough to talk. I told him what had happened, still in shock. We tried waking Amir and Rylan up, but had no luck. Jaden and I figured we had no better option than to pray those guys didn't decide to track us down. But they never came. If they had, I might not be telling this story. We waited about an hour for our friends to wake up, and when they finally did, we told them everything. We had a million questions. Who were those girls? Who were those other guys? What were they going to do to us? It was chilling imagining what could have happened had I not been quick enough to pretend to drink. Best case scenario, we would have just woken up robbed, but even that would have been horrible. Something tells me no one goes to those extremes just to rob some broke, college-looking kids. Besides, who really keeps valuables on them while skiing? I guess Amir's and Rylan's expensive skis were worth stealing, but even then it felt like overkill. Plus, how would they have even known we had expensive skis instead of rentals? Nothing made sense. Finding the car was hell. Reporting it to the police was hell. The drive back home was hell. The people running the mountain swore they'd identify those people, but we obviously had to get back on the road and couldn't verify that. The police took it more seriously and told us they'd update us if anything came up. I think it even made local news, but it's been years now, and they obviously never found anything. To this day, we have no idea what kind of roofie they gave us. Nothing online described anything that effective so quickly, especially in such a small amount. Our best guess was that the substance was a mix of drugs, which makes sense because all my friends felt woozy after they woke up. Those girls, and whoever else was behind the whole thing, were some sick people. I can only hope it was just an elaborate robbery and nothing more sinister. The man in the bear suit. This is going to sound a little weird, but bear with me. Every winter, my friends Kyle, Ricky, and I have this little tradition of walking out onto this frozen lake a few towns over. It's not some grand event or anything, we just do it for fun. There's something about the vibe of being out there on the ice, surrounded by the quiet stillness that feels almost otherworldly. It's just one of those simple things we've always enjoyed. Call us weird, but we can never get enough of the serenity. If you've ever been out in nature by yourself, with the only sound being the gentle patter of snowflakes, you know what I'm talking about. It feels like you've got a piece of nature all to yourself. The photos always turn out great too, which is a huge plus for a couple of edgy guys like us. This happened this past winter. It's April as I'm writing this, so about 4 months ago now. I know what you're probably thinking, but don't worry, none of us fell through the ice. That's not what this story is about. It was snowing pretty heavily that night, which was the main reason we decided to go. It had been consistently below freezing for a couple of weeks too, so we were relatively confident the lake was completely frozen over. I'd personally take winter over summer any day of the week. I bet all my friends would agree. There are about 1 million reasons why, but one of them is as simple as the snowfall itself. First of all, it's just pretty. What I like most about it, though, is that you'll never find yourself in complete darkness. Even after sunset, the world isn't entirely dark. The light reflecting off the white snow blends day and night, so you're left with this really surreal feeling that doesn't arise from anything else. The moon was also pretty full that night, so that feeling was amplified. Kyle was driving that night. He had a pickup that handled pretty well in the snow, so we just played it safe and let him drive, even though Ricky was usually the one who chauffeured us around. The lake itself is surrounded by a thin forest, so we couldn't actually drive all the way to the water's edge. I don't think forest is the right word. It's really just a cluster of sparsely scattered trees, but it's more than enough to prevent a car from driving through. We parked in a nearby lot and got out of the car. It was freezing out. The three of us bundled up and walked toward the lake. I didn't smoke at the time. I still don't. But Ricky and Kyle both do, so they lit a couple of cigarettes as we walked. I think it was after midnight, but I can't say for sure. All I remember is that there wasn't a soul out there. Not an animal, not a person, nothing. No movement whatsoever besides the three of us. We reached the lake, and as we anticipated, it seemed completely frozen over. The three of us were laughing about something stupid when Kyle picked up a small boulder and chucked it onto the ice, testing its integrity. It didn't even crack, so we took that as an indication to make our way toward the middle of the lake. We obviously didn't go super far on the ice. That would have been careless, but we did venture a decent ways away from the ledge. We were maybe 100 feet out when something caught our attention. On the far side of the lake, near the edge where the trees bordered the ice, something big and dark was moving. We stopped talking immediately. We just stopped in our tracks, watching. Whatever it was large, hunched over, and moving slowly toward the lake. Finally, we realized what we were looking at. It was a bear. Ricky was the first to say something. He whispered, "Is that a bear?" as quietly as he could. I didn't answer. My heart was already racing. If it was a bear, the last thing we wanted to do was draw its attention. We stood there, frozen, not even daring to breathe too loudly. But then, as the figure moved closer, something felt off. The way it walked wasn't quite right. Too upright, too human. It also looked like there was something dragging behind it. Nothing about it made sense. It was one of the most bizarre things I'd ever seen. And that's when it straightened up completely, and we realized the truth all at once. It wasn't a bear. It was a person. A person wearing some kind of bear suit. Kyle said, "What the hell?" in a low voice, and I was thinking the same exact thing. I know it doesn't sound scary in a generic sense, but if you had been there, you would have been terrified too. I tried to respond, but the words wouldn't come. I don't know if I was more afraid or confused. but something told me to stay quiet. The figure kept moving toward the ice, dragging something behind him. At first, it was hard to tell what it was. The snow blurred the details, but as he got closer, I realized he was holding a rope that was attached to the thing he was dragging, and a few moments later, we could see it more clearly. It was a small black bag. It looked like a smaller-sized garbage bag, if they even made those. Either way, it was chilling. We stood there, unsure of what to do. My mind was screaming at me to turn around and leave, but my body felt paralyzed. I couldn't move. I don't think Ricky and Kyle were too keen on turning around and leaving either, because neither one of them flinched. I probably wouldn't have left right then, even if I hadn't been so scared. I needed to know what that person was doing. And then, as if the situation couldn't get any stranger, the man unzipped and stepped out of the bear suit. Seeing him as a person didn't make things any better. He wasn't particularly large or intimidating, but there was something unsettling about him. We watched as he bent down, presumably to pick up a rock, but I couldn't tell from so far away. And then the sound started. He knelt down holding what looked like a rock and began repeatedly slamming it into the ice. It might have been placebo, but I swear I could feel the vibration in the ice, even from the distance. He was trying to break through, most likely to dispose of whatever was in that bag. Ricky tapped my shoulder, and I turned to see him and Kyle moving back towards solid ground. Without a word, I followed suit, and the three of us tried to move quickly without making too much noise. Every step felt deafening in the quiet, even though I knew there was no way that guy could hear the crunch of snow from that far away. We barely made it a few yards when a voice yelled out, "Hey!" from behind us. I didn't even look back. I just started running, praying that guy didn't have a gun. The cold didn't help. I found myself starting to get winded after not even a minute of running. I don't know if he followed. I don't think he did. But in that moment, we were in full-on panic mode. We reached the edge of the lake, and at that point, I was gasping for breath. After a very short break, we made our way back to the car silently, and Kyle drove off immediately. None of us had any idea what we had just seen. Kyle said it was probably someone dumping their trash, but I told him that was ridiculous. Who in their right mind would dress up in a bear suit in the middle of the winter to illegally dump their trash? There was no way. Ricky said it was definitely someone dumping a body, but I told him the bag was way too small for that. The three of us talked about it the whole ride home, but we couldn't agree on a definite explanation. We never got an answer. The reason I'm thinking about this now is because my mom was watching TV the other day, and an old missing persons report popped up on the screen. It was a child from around our area, and the timeline of his disappearance matched up pretty closely with what we had seen on that lake. I'm not jumping to conclusions. I know it's a long shot and probably just an unfortunate coincidence, but I can't help but wonder if those two things are somehow related. By the time you're hearing this, we've probably reported our sighting to the police.